So in this video, we're going to talk about message framing. And the reason we spend so much time on message framing is so much of advocacy is really about communication. Could be communicating to the public to build public will, could be communicating to policymakers on proposals that you want done. But communication has to be intentional and has to be strategic, just as with all your other advocacy. And when we talk about message framing, we're talking about something very specific. There's a real science now around message framing about how the brain processes information and where do you get that information and how do you think about that information. How do we create a frame for you, in other words, a mental shortcut about what we want you to think about something. So in addition to having your facts and your research about the problem you're addressing, you have to have the words that will influence action to adopt the policy change you are promoting. More research, more data isn't necessarily going to influence any better than what you already have. It has to be used in this concept of framing. So framing also starts knowing that no one is a blank slate. Whatever you hear in the media, whatever you hear from friends, whatever you read about is already coming to you with a set of experiences and beliefs that you have, whether those were experiences and beliefs you learned at school, like how you learned about the Civil War, about your family, which could have any number of variables about why you hold certain beliefs, and also your sources of information in the media are increasingly about beliefs. But knowing what people's frames are, it is not impossible to shift the frame. We're really reframing all the time in policy. So framing is especially important to the policy discourse. According to Frameworks Institute, which is the leading group that does this work with a lot of advocates at the federal, state, and local level, it takes into account how the American public understands various social issues and how nonprofit communicators can frame the public discourse on those issues to advance policy outcomes. And I would add, it's not only the public discourse, but it's the way in which the policymakers are talking about a problem and its solution. So the words are really intentional in framing, and as you will see from these examples, this isn't a whole lot of data. These aren't a lot of research points. These aren't charts necessarily, although you can frame with a chart. Here's an example. You can frame it as a person is an illegal alien or a person is an undocumented worker. The first frame suggests someone is breaking the law and has not exhibited any value for being here in the United States. The other frame of undocumented worker suggests that the person is doing the right thing by working, which is a value that's held in American culture, but somehow didn't get all the paperwork together. Here's another example from the reading you did from Mindful Messaging by Spitfire Strategies. So for an anti-litter effort in Texas, campaigners knew that the group that they had to shift for public will to become political will was young men who actually didn't care about the environment or didn't care about littering, but they were very prideful of being Texans, of being from the Lone Star State. So keeping this value in mind, rather than talking about what litter does to the environment, what it means to throw out trash and leave plastic bags, and what that means for birds and animals and the like, they did this frame. They focused on pride rather than littering. And they came up with the frame, "Don't mess with Texas," which one hears for many things, but actually started in this campaign against littering, which is keep Texas beautiful, don't mess with Texas. Here's another example of a frame. In juvenile justice, there is a policy issue about holding juveniles for life without parole. So two ways that people can change this frame is either to lean in on the tough on crime, and we want to make sure that some people never get parole because we're tough on crime. There's a belief that value is that life without parole is a deterrent to juvenile crime. Your new frame, if you're on the side that is trying to create parole and to eliminate life in prison and detention for juveniles, is to say The science tells us that adolescent brains are still developing. An area that is different from adults is their impulse control. And even though teenagers may have done a very bad thing, we need to consider that they're still forming into the people they're going to be, and we can't write them off prematurely. So there is still a good chance that these teens can be redeemed. So as you go forward with your policy problem and your proposed solution in your coalition, think about the frame of your issue. What are the values that are being expressed now about it? What is the frame you want people to have? What's the mental shortcut? Very much a visual image of the problem. Consider how people get their sources of information. That also lends itself to the frame they have. Where would you reframe it? You have to think about your messengers. Who's the best group of people to put forward your frame? It's not always the people who have self-interest. In fact, many framers say those are the wrong messengers. It's also important not to keep pointing out your opponent's frame is wrong. You're just re-emphasizing your opponent's frame, and the mental shortcut keeps being built over and over again. So for instance, in talking to reporters, when you say daycare compared to childcare, are you getting a frame out there that we're taking care of children in sort of a warehousing? Or are we taking care of children? We're caring for children as opposed to we're caring for the day. So who is your audience? What is their current frame? How would you make use of values, not just data? And then put together a clear picture, test it on each other. Realize that your coalition needs a shared frame, although some messages may be different, and consider who your various messengers would be.